The mayor of Tonganoxie, I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the Tonganoxie City Council for August 15th, 2022. Ms. Huntington, if you would note that I am here, and call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor. Ms. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we approved the minutes from the previous meeting from August 1st, 2022. Council, do you have any questions or conversation or comments on the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Ms. Huntington, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
You might repeat.
Ms. Stevens?
Lost her.
Laura Lee, we might have you, I don't know if your phone is maybe muted. We can't hear your audio.
Well, motion passes 2.
We'd have to wait, Mayor.
We do have to wait.
wouldn't have
Yeah, you're
the-
right. You're right. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll try to connect with her. Laura Lee, are you able to hear us?
You want to recess until we can establish contact with her again?
A couple minutes might be good.
2 minutes. 2-minute recess.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
Thanks, Laura Lee. Okay.
Ms. Stevens, we
Yes,
were looking
I
for.
approve the minutes.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 3, the consent agenda. When we review our bill payments for the month, are there any questions or conversation or comments regarding the consent agenda and bill payments? Seeing none, I would accept a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Ms. Huntington, will you call the roll for the vote, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to old business, see nothing listed. This also is the time of the meeting when the public can sign up to speak at the meeting, should they choose. Did we have any signups, Mr. Porter?
No signups, Mayor.
Thank you. Onward to new business. Item A, Resolution 08-2202, consider approval of Church Street bid Church Street Bridge Project bid. Mr. Brakovich?
Thanks, Mayor. So this is a project that we've talked about for quite some time. I think it's been about 2 years in planning stages. We sent the project out for bid. We did receive a total of 5 bids, which was pretty aggressive. The engineer's opinion of probable cost on this project was a little over $695,000. The low bid is in the amount of $620,546.00, and that's from Lina Weaver Construction. They are considered a local business because they're located within Leavenworth County. If this vendor's name is familiar, they also did our sanitary sewer project not too long ago. And so BG evaluated the proposal. It is a qualified bid. One thing to point out, the contract specifies that it's 75 days for substantial completion upon starting the project. We reached out to the contractor just to see where this project would schedule in, knowing we had to, because we're doing some creek channel alignment work, we needed the water level to be about as low as it can get before we started that work. So right now, we're targeting mid-November to early December to start that project. So that project will span 2 years in terms of construction, starting this year and being completed next. After tonight, if you decide to move forward with this notice of award, there will be an exchange between the city engineering group and the contractor on construction documents, getting things ironed out. And eventually, that's probably a 30 to 45-day process, and eventually they would get a notice to proceed and then would get that hard start date. So staff is recommending moving forward with this item. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Council? Can I selfishly ask if we can get this expedited as quickly as we can get it done as quickly as possible?
Yeah, we will certainly put that request in again.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no questions, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from Lina Weaver Construction for the 2022 Church Street Bridge project for an amount not to exceed $620,546 and authorization to issue a notice to proceed to the company.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Ms. Huntington, can you call the roll for the vote, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item B, consider approval of biannual bridge inspection services contract with BG Consultants. Mr. Brakovich?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just real quickly, again, you're probably familiar with this item. KDOT requires that all of the city bridges be inspected on a 2-year cycle, and so that work is needing to be completed before the year end. BG's done that for us in the past. We have 4 city bridges that we look at. BG's proposal is in the amount of $3,850 to complete this work, and staff is recommending we move forward with that. Be happy to answer any additional questions.
Any questions, council?
Just out of curiosity, what is the scope of their inspection?
They look at a variety of things: surface condition, steel, any obvious deficiencies. If there's potholes, they will document all of that, and it's set into a KDOT matrix, I believe, of information that they look for to be submitted through a viable engineering group.
And when was the 4th Street bridge? When was that? I'm wondering, from a 4th Street and a Church Street, 2 bridges that were already, we've had discussions about their conditions and all of that. How inspecting those, really does anything, since we just had 4th Street looked at and we're gonna make repairs.
Correct, yeah, so this is separate from the evaluation we did, condition evaluation, to try to determine our priorities for bridge replacement or bridge repair. And this is strictly to satisfy the elements that KDOT requires in bridge inspections to incur every 2 years. I mean, I understand
Even
what
though
you're
we
saying.
have those
We
coming up.
can't submit our other inspection report and satisfy this requirement.
Ah, the state, bureaucracy.
Mr. McCutcheon, do you have any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the approval of the required routine inspection for all 4 bridges with BG Consultants in an amount not to exceed $3,850.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Ms. Huntington, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
All right. Item C, consider approval of temporary use agreement with the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission for hunter safety courses in fall 2022 and spring 2022. Mr. Porter?
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the agenda packet tonight for your consideration is a temporary license agreement modeled very closely after similar agreements approved in 2021 and for this year for spring classes offered through the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission, but utilizing city facilities. More particularly, they utilize the Public Works shop building for an indoor space with area to spread out and safely demonstrate hunter safety techniques to a class of children and adults that sign up through the state for a training program that's regimented through the state but provided by local volunteers that are coordinated through the Rec Commission. In addition to utilizing the maintenance shop, they'll also utilize the city's firing range located just south of the maintenance shop at the Public Works facility. And they coordinate that effort with our police department who control access to that facility. Staff have reviewed the proposed dates included in this agreement, which include September 10th, 2022, October 1st, 2022, and one weekend in March 2023 that's not yet determined. So we've left a blank date in the date column of the agreement for that reference. We do hope to bring this item back for consideration on a once per year basis. So you could expect next year at the same time, should the interest in utilizing our facility continue, to see a similar agreement proposed. There's no cost included or recouped from the city, but we also don't staff the event. We merely provide access and ensure that cleaning and other reconfiguration of the sites is done to our satisfaction after each class. We have no issues to report from this year or recent year classes and do recommend that you consider approval of this agreement. Once that's complete, staff would coordinate with the Rec Commission and complete the counter signature and allow them to proceed in September.
All right.
Happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions, council? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary license agreement between City of Tonganoxie and the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission for hunter safety courses in the city maintenance shop.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Ms. Huntington, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
All right, motion passes, all ayes. Item D, review and consider applications for city council position vacancy. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the agenda packet for your consideration tonight is a couple of different materials. The first being a memorandum prepared by the city attorney, Anna Kirstelich, and it details both relevant city code provisions and a timeline that I'll briefly recap for everyone and for the record. Starting on July 18th, 2022, we've incurred a vacancy in the position of city council member with the passing of Rocky Hempel, who had been recently elected to his position and had begun his second term on the city council. On July 27th, 2022, the request for applications and interested parties was posted on the city's website, and correspondingly, we've listed an opportunity in that publication for a first review of applications at a regular city council meeting scheduled for this evening. And so that's what's before you tonight. a first review of the application that we did receive. And the applicant is here as well tonight and indicated he'd be willing to speak with you and answer any questions you might have about his interest in the position. In terms of the timeline, we do have September 6, 2022 as our last regular meeting of the City Council without having to call a special meeting that predates the September 16th deadline for a vacancy to be filled without requiring a special election and the cost that would be incurred by the city in the case of such a special election. In addition, in discussions with the county clerk about timing of special election and registration periods, the earliest we could anticipate even a mail ballot special election to be able to be completed would actually be in the spring of next year because of the deadlines already being met for the fall 2022 election cycle for candidate registration and preparation of the ballot. So in a nutshell, it's imperative if we want to see a vacancy being filled in an expedient fashion to make a decision prior to that September 16th, 2022 deadline. I'll recap also the summarized action required to fill a term fill an unexpired term, and I'll read this for reference. To fill a vacancy in compliance with City Code Section 1-208, the mayor or any city council member may nominate a candidate, and then each member of the governing body, including the mayor, would vote on the nomination. The successful candidate would be approved by a majority vote of the governing body. I am happy to take any questions you have, and I'm sure Anna would be happy to do so as well. And again, as I mentioned, the applicant, Matt Partridge, is here tonight and indicated he'd be willing to talk with you as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Partridge, would you care to address the body?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I won't say anything much more than what's already been submitted on my application materials, but I just will say that I believe strongly in civic service, and I believe that in order to provide good civic service, whoever is appointed for the position of the unexpired term of Mr. Hempel, that position requires someone who is willing to listen to the needs of the community, as well as the experts who work for our government, as well as other council members. And all I can say is that I pledge, if selected for that position, to do my very best to meet the high standards that would require. So with that, I'll answer any questions anybody might have.
Do you have any questions about any of the business that we've discussed this evening so far?
No, I don't. I have reviewed probably the last 3 months or so city board minutes and don't have any questions at this time. I must admit I'm not as near as up to date as any of you are on any of these issues, but again, I can tell you that being well informed on those issues is something I think should be a priority of whoever is the next city council person.
Thank you. Mr. Dale, Ms. McCutcheon, Ms. Stevens, any questions?
What do you see as the most pressing issues of the city?
Well, I believe, first of all, in fiscal responsibility in terms of being holding a fiduciary responsibility to the local citizenry and using local funds appropriately. That's my professional background is in government and nonprofit accounting, and believe strongly in a public trust between government and the people to use funds properly and appropriately. Beyond that, I believe that it's our job to provide the citizens of this community with a voice for any and all of their concerns and to make sure that their concerns are heard and respected. And I also think it's important that an open mind and being flexible is very important in today's environment, that so many of today's issues are nuanced and require looking at from a variety of angles. And that's all I can say is that I would promise to do that on any issue that came before the council.
Any further questions? Does Ms. Stevens have any questions?
No, but I am aware of Matt, that he and his family live in downtown Tonganoxie. And I know that, that downtown isn't the only aspect of Tonganoxie, but it is important and vital, and for folks to have kids in the school district. And, I know that Matt and his wife have been, residents, of the downtown part of the town and are committed to helping, to make it vibrant and being in, be active participants in the town. So I think that that's a valuable asset for Matt as a potential candidate.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Mr. Partridge, you can have a seat now if you'd like.
All right, thank you.
So, council, we can wait another month or we can move forward. It's my belief that this candidate is eminently qualified. From speaking with him tonight and looking over his papers that he submitted, is there any desire to wait another month for more applications?
My only concern would be that, that we did say August 26th as the end of the 30-day application period. And, I would think that willing applicants would have applied by now, but we did say the 26th, and it is not an easy decision. And certainly, I'd prefer to provide as much time as we've said.
I agree.
Okay,
I know myself as a procrastinator, so,
okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Partridge. We'll let you know in the coming weeks. Thank you very much. Okay, that's the end of new business. Moving on to the city manager agenda, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one item under the city manager's agenda this evening, and that is the delivery of the July 2022 financial report. That's a report that's 9 pages of graphs and analysis, and then several additional pages that include expenditure budget authority, expenditures year to date, fund balance levels through the end of July 2022, and other information. To highlight where we are at the end of July of this year, we've completed 58% of the city's fiscal year, which is aligned with the calendar year. We've collected 76% of revenues across all budgeted funds and spent 54% of expenditures in all budgeted funds. To highlight a couple key considerations as we look towards sort of the middle to the end of the current fiscal year, we have completed mid-year budget amendments for the Police Equipment Reserve Fund twice. Once at the occurrence of an unexpected grant match opportunity for radios, and an additional time for additional expenditure authority for routine equipment purchases such as ballistic vests and ammunition. The Water Capital Funds also had a mid-year adjustment to allow us to purchase additional large-size water meters that are quite costly and are more than paid for with the tap or connection fees paid by new users with meters of that size in our utility. We're also still monitoring several funds for mid-year budget adjustments, which include the Special Highway Fund, the Water Operations Fund, and then potentially the Sewer Operations and Sewer Capital Fund. Some of those, the impetus for those are projects carried over from the prior year. Some is due to the anticipated advancement of projects like the design elements for the wastewater treatment plant, Phase 1 and Phase 2 scope of work development for future utility work. When we look at upcoming pages of the report, such as pages 2 and 3, we have illustrations also of the major fund revenue performance this year to date, last year to date, and the target level or limit level of the revenue or expenditure budget illustrated for those funds. The major funds illustrate that for the general fund, our water and sewer operations funds, our special highway fund, and our city debt bond and interest fund. On the utility side, we also highlight capital fund revenue and expenses in the city's capital projects fund, fire equipment reserve, police equipment reserve, and sewer and water capital reserve accounts. All of these funds have strong revenue performance. I believe, with the exception of the sewer operations fund, revenues outpace prior year revenues in all funds listed in this report. And we also are well within our budgetary constraints for expenditure authority in all budgeted funds as well, which is something that we'll continue to monitor as we near the end of this fiscal year. Moving quickly to page 4 of 9 of the report, our city sales tax collections are broken down between the general fund receipts and infrastructure sales tax receipts. Through 7 months of the year, we continue to be ahead of pace with our budget expectations. City sales tax came in a little less advanced from budget compared to last month, but we still are at 10.7% ahead of pace in sales tax, and in use tax, a whopping 50.7% ahead of pace. We also, on the capital projects fund, which is the city's share of the county sales tax, are standing at 6.3% ahead of last year's pace for county sales, and for county use tax at 32.8%. The trend we've seen the last 2 years, and really 2.5 years, has been accelerated volume and gross amount of use tax collections. We still see that, but at a slightly less accelerated level than in, let's say, 2021, when both sales and use tax were at the marks they're at today in respect to the prior year. So while we're still seeing growth year over year, we're not seeing it at the same pace as we were in 2021 compared to 2020. Obviously, there's been a lot of adjustments in that period of time, with various periods of businesses being open or closed or restricted in use, and online ordering and online shopping has obviously evolved too. But really, this trend is seemingly here to stay, of use tax being a much bigger component of our sales and use tax collections. We don't see any significant drop off, and we're now seeing receipts from 2 months ago in actuality, and obviously that was the period in the early summer when you'll remember gas prices were peaking and inflationary concerns were really at the forefront of a lot of conversations people were having. And again, we are not seeing a retraction in pace of revenue from sales and use tax so far. That doesn't mean we won't see different trends the next couple months, but that's something we'll keep monitoring as well as we go forward in the year. Moving to page 6 in the report, there's a summary of general fund expenditures by unique category: salaries and benefits, contractual services, commodities, and capital outlay, as well as a commodities cost trends detail for fuel and oil, electricity, and natural gas and propane. And we highlight those because of inflationary track record of those expenses, and fuel and oil or gas and diesel in a sense is still 46% ahead of last year in terms of gross expenses year to date through July. Electricity is actually down from last year at this time by 15%, which is a little more of an accelerated pace than we were down in last month's financials report, if you remember that. And then natural gas and propane we don't use very often in the summer months, and so we will see some spending on that at the very end of the year, and mostly in the early spring of next year when we refill our propane tanks and have higher gas bills for heating costs of city facilities. When we look at budget for fuel and oil, we are going to exceed in that line item, and so departments, as they monitor their own individual budgets for their departments near the end of the year, will need to identify other line items with savings or with anticipated savings to make up for that increase in expenditures. Fortunately, fuel and oil are not high commodity costs. We do incur those, obviously, for police patrol vehicles, fire response vehicles, and public works utility vehicles that are traveling around the city all day, really, and sometimes all night. But as you can see by the gross amounts listed we're still not seeing that as a huge primary cost of our operations. While it is a cost, it's not overly significant in terms of impact from fluctuation in price like we've seen this year. We also, on page 7 of the report, have a more detailed look at the financial performance of the water park. This is, again, through the end of July, so it doesn't include the last 2 full weeks of 7 days a week operations. The pool closed this last Friday for weekday operations and will be on weekends only through September 6th, Labor Day holiday. We will ask that our pool manager prepare a more detailed admissions, season pass, rentals, and other activities at the water park for next month's financial report. But we wanted to give you this information this month so you could see through the majority of the summer season how the expenses and the revenues are performing in light of the rate adjustments that were approved for this year and some of the compensation adjustments for some of the seasonal staff in hard-to-fill positions like lifeguarding. A couple things I'll point out. Our total, and I apologize, there is one typo on the upper chart on page 7. It says total revenue, it's total expenses. And we are 3% lower than last year through July. That's driven primarily by savings in chemicals. In 2021, our first year being open after being closed in 2020, we did have to purchase a lot more chemicals up front because what we had in stock from the prior season had expired and wasn't safe to utilize. That's one big adjustment. It actually outweighed, the savings there outweighed the increase we did see in salary costs for our water park employees. So that included an adjustment in pay for the starting wage of lifeguards and assistant managers, and also a $2 an hour premium pay amount for lifeguarding during summer swim lessons. So with those 2 adjustments in compensation, you can see there is a 30% personal services cost change from last year compared to this year through July. So overall, expenses did shake out just a little bit less than last year, but again, due primarily to that chemical and probably other commodity startup costs that were different coming in from a year being closed to a year of last year being open. Looking at the revenue detail, I tried to illustrate at the bottom of the page a slide from the consideration and discussion and later approval of rate changes. If you'll remember, the basic premise of the rate changes was targeted at recapturing more of the cost of operations of the facility at the water park each summer. We looked at daily admissions, season pass, punch passes, facility rentals, and swim lessons, and compared our traditional and really historic rate levels, compared them to other communities, and then later approved adjusted amounts that are demonstrated in that slide. We anticipated back then that we would come in at about $16,350 in year-over-year changes in revenue collections based on those adjustments. We've actually seen a little more than that. At instead of 12% revenue change year-over-year, we're actually standing right now overall at 18% revenue change year-over-year. In discussions with Darren Shoup, our pool manager, he seems to believe that there's been an increased appetite for rentals at the facility, and he's also had staff more able to provide additional rental slots to fill. And so he anecdotally at least has shared that he thinks that there was more interest than ever in our rentals of the facility this year. And he even added rental slots in the morning prior to the water park opening because the demand was just so high for birthday parties or other summer get-togethers, and the afternoon or evening time slots were just simply full for the whole season really quickly. So obviously these revenue numbers will also change with the last 2 weeks of full operations and weekends through the end of the season, but wanted to give you this information now so you could see that revenue performance is increased and expenditure levels are at a pretty good level compared to last year, although slightly advanced when you discount the chemical cost change. But happy to take any questions you may have about that detail or any aspects of the report. But as I mentioned, there are other pages included, including our current year budget initiatives and a list of checked and unchecked boxes for those that we have yet to conclude or substantially begin. But overall, a good report to share. And again, we're monitoring a few budget amendment options for a few funds, but things are going really well, and the summer went well so far with the water park as well. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Are we sensing that the extra fuel costs are going to be a hardship on our departments, or you think we'll be okay?
I don't believe there will be a major issue. We've seen, obviously, everyone's noticed the slight downtick in cost. The city does receive a discounted rate for fuel and bulk amounts that we purchase. We lag a little bit behind what you see at the gas stations personally. But as I mentioned before, fuel is a minor cost compared to some of the other more extensive costs in these department budgets. And usually there are other options to stay within budget as a whole or at category level when one line item like this is unavoidably high. So, yeah.
Council, do you have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item F, the city attorney agenda. No items, Mayor. All right, thank you. The city council agenda. Council, do you have anything you want to make mention of?
Not I.
Okay. Item I is the mayor agenda. I would like to appoint Ms. Stevens as the new mayor pro tem with, I guess, do we need to take a motion for that, or is?
We can ask Ms. Kirstlick, but I believe that's your appointment, Mayor.
Okay, then that's my appointment then.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your confidence in me.
Yeah, thank you for being willing to serve, Ms. Stevens. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
I cede the rest of my time to Mr. Dale.
I would take that time to make the motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you, everyone. See you in a couple weeks.